some of you I know quite well. But before I go on, I will just give you a short introduction about who am I. Well, first of all, I'm very delighted to be invited to this fantastic fair. I think more countries should learn from Thailand, because I think all countries sometimes take the rule of law for granted. Just because you have a constitution or a criminal law, that doesn't make it happen. You have to be humble to make this. Sometimes it means confronting yourself and your stereotypes. So very often, welcome. The biggest problems, welcome. Don't sell any more tickets. Welcome. So I said, very often, the biggest challenges to a rule of law, I think, is closest to ourselves. And changing ourselves, as you know, it's one of the most challenging things. So it's things linked to human behavior that also makes rule of law difficult, psychologically and culturally, sociologically. So much of my writings is about these things, what you can do with yourself to become a more professional decision maker. It's very hard, but you need systems and methods and cultures who support that you have to be something more than we really are. So this is hard to admit, that we are born with some weaknesses as human beings. And only when you admit that, you can start addressing it. So this is sometimes hard, and I think hard to admit, especially if you are from an agency of the government, because of course we are supposed to be professional, and you think it's enough just to write it. We are, of course, professional. This is a word that is used all the time. We are so professional. But what does it really mean to be professional? I think you have to start with being humble and understanding that you are not perfect, and we all have imperfections that need to be addressed systematically to become a better professional. So sometimes this is hard to talk about, and we don't have to talk about it outside the office, but we can at least talk about it inside the office. To create a culture, I think sometimes I like to compare us with top athletes. If you want to become, let's say, the fastest woman in the world, well, first of all, you have to admit that you are not yet the fastest woman in the world. You have to come from where you are to where you want to be. This kind of culture of constant pushing yourself and development is something you will find amongst top athletes. And I love that culture because it's humble and hardworking. So that is very much the same. That is my message in my idea about how to become an expert investigator. And that is mostly what I write about also. So, but enough about that. My background is, I am still a serving police officer, but not for so long, because I will actually retire in the summer. But I also have a PhD in psychology, where my work was especially on how detectives make decisions and what makes you good. Again, the analogy to top athletes, I want to see what is good. Can good be measured? And how do you become good? So we have to define what goodness is in our own area. Because I think sometimes it's hard to describe. We can all recognize it when we see it. You see something you think is high performance, but why do you think that? How can you describe that? And can it be measured? Can it be tested and say, now you are one of the best in the world? Why? Welcome. So, welcome. So this is the backdrop that I'm going to speak about, artificial intelligence. You know, guys, artificial intelligence, this is the coolest guy in town right now. And it's very important, I think, that we actually address it and use it. At the same time, I think it's also maybe the beginning of the end of human cultures if we if we use it in the wrong way. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. I will take you a little bit back. Some of you might remember these Terminator movies. I think this is really made Arnold Schwarzenegger very famous. So these are the early ideas about artificial intelligence was very much linked to robots. Robots that will replace you. And someone amongst us that you don't know who is human and who is robot. Who can you trust and who has a heart? That's, if you need their heart to speak, will it speak? Or will it simply just be a machine that has no heart? Welcome. So that is the old way of thinking about artificial intelligence in Hollywood. Is linked to fear, and we think they might come and replace us completely. So they were seen as a threat to the human race. Physically, also. I think this is quite interesting, because at this time, this is made in the 1980s, wasn't it? 90s or 80s. Artificial intelligence didn't actually exist. It was just an idea. So, but I think we shouldn't forget what it looked like. Why did we still have some fear? Now, when we talk about artificial intelligence, we don't talk so much about the robot-like warrior. We more talk about the systems, the algorithms that control your life. And you can't see them. They are just there like a ghost. And that is probably harder to protect yourself against than something that is physical and visible. I would also like to take you back into another classic from Hollywood. This is a scene, I want you to see it with me, but probably it will be hard for our translators to translate the video, but you will maybe you would try. The point is not word by word, ladies. The point is here to just look into what Hollywood, again, this time with Tom Cruise, how they predicted artificial intelligence within our area, criminal justice. This is from a very famous movie. If you haven't seen it, it's a classic. It's called Minority Report. It highlights minority. You know, it's the class that we are expendable. Who is it? There is always someone in the society that is targeted by the agencies, the minority. And of course, we know a good democracy is a place where also minorities feel safe. Isn't it? That is, I think, the definition of a good society, a place where outcasts and minorities feel the same safe space like everybody. So it's close to the heart of rule of law. So the point here in this movie is that they have created some kind of machine that is driven by some special human beings who can see what is going to happen. So we are talking about how to identify future criminals. So this is the wet dream of every people working with intelligence. How can we predict who is going to be a threat in the future? So it's kind of, we know that our ability as human beings to predict the future is very low. I think if I was here now in June, who would think that Donald Trump will be re-elected? Fucking hell, it's the worst president ever. And they re-elect him. Very hard to predict. So, and now he is president, and it's even harder to predict what is going to happen tomorrow. What will be the next thing? And who of the world leaders are willing to support him in some of his madness? So predictions are fundamentally difficult for human beings. And I think the reason psychologically is about this because we cannot leave our hopes behind. It's very hard to be completely rational. In fact, I think we are much less rational than we like to believe. We are fundamentally emotional people, where hopes and love and fears govern our ideas much more than we actually are aware of. So let's see what Minority Report predicted.
Okay, Jad, what's coming?
Double homicide, one male, one female. Killer's male, white, 40s.
Set up a perimeter and tell them we're en route. I'm placing you under arrest for the future murder of Sarah Marks. Give the man his hat.
The future can be seen.
All we have to run on are the images that they produce.
We see what they see.
There hasn't been a murder in 6 years. There's nothing wrong with the system. It is
Perfect, I agree.
Murder can be stopped.
Tell me exactly what it is you're looking for.
Flaws. You ever get any false positives? We are arresting individuals who have broken no law.
But they will.
The fact that you prevented it from happening doesn't change the fact that it was going to happen.
The system can't be wrong.
You say something, Chief?
No. You're in a lot of trouble, John. I have a warrant in my pocket that says murder. Don't run.
You don't have to chase me.
From 20th Century Fox
He set me up. He set me up.
and DreamWorks Pictures.
Who's the victim? I've never heard of him, but I'm supposed to kill him in less than 36 hours.
He's gonna get her.
Tom Cruise
I need your help. If you contain information, I need to know how to get at it.
in a Steven Spielberg film.
I have to know. I have to find out what happened in my life. You tell me, who was it set this up?
I don't know.
How about now?
On June 21st, everybody runs.
I love you.
No, it's hard.
Minority Report.
I think this is a fantastic movie because it's looking into the future about how we think we can find future criminals by using AI and arrest them before they become a criminal to protect us even better. Listen, this is, of course, we have a society where preventing crime is more important than punishing crime. So if you can, but I think this is pulling it a little bit too far. When we mean preventing crime, I think we want softer measures. We want them to stop. Like for instance, in London, they have a very interesting preventive intelligence service, where Muslims in the London police are attending the mosques in the suburbs of London. Together with the imams, they identify young men who are on the way towards potential terrorism. They're very aggressive, get very fundamental, and then they invite them into a program. It's actually a role play it's called Operation Nicole, how they can justify their own ideas, but also get them challenged before they run too far and there is no way back. Find different ideas that can help you to communicate your frustration and meanings in a more fruitful way than becoming a terrorist. So that is what I think is a very good example of how prevention can be done. Actually meeting these people, helping them, but also taking them seriously, respecting them that they have strong opinions, and not just put them to jail. Actually, we need people with strong opinions, don't we? So this is what I think is an ideal, what we should look about. Not trying to put them to jail for crimes that hasn't been committed. But we still know that since this movie was made, most of the countries I know have changed their law so that we now can convict you for future crimes. If you are planning terrorism, we can arrest you and jail you. So that has, now we think about it as normal, but when it happened, we all think about what are we leaving behind? The whole old principle that you cannot be judged for something that still did not happen. Because we had the idea that you should be giving the possibility to step back, even though you are quite close. So now, for certain crimes, that is gone. And we have to admit that that is done in fair. It's done in fair for having a big terrorist attack. So then we are lowering the threshold for rule of law, because we never know if this really was going to happen. Myself, I have been interviewing, as I said, I am a police detective. I've been interviewing many young men from Iran, Iraq, who have had the idea that maybe it's a good way for me to become a terrorist, and they recruited into it. But think about it, to go there and pull that suicide bomb west and really blow yourself up, it's a very hard thing to do, and most of them couldn't do it. They stopped before they pulled and tried to surrender to their enemy and say, listen, I was here to blow myself up, but I cannot do it. None of them was believed. They all said, okay, the mechanism didn't work. Your intention was to blow yourself up. Yes, it was, but I didn't do it. So I have met many of these men. So who to believe? What should you believe? I think that very much depends on what is your fear. So we have to be careful about crimes that hasn't been committed yet. And hopefully we can agree about that. And I think this movie predicted that quite a long time ago. And also the dangers, of course, of letting technology help us in doing something that is fundamentally very hard and problematic. So, but since we are talking about artificial intelligence, just let's create a shared image of what is artificial intelligence. Well, we can look at it as we all have seen the weaker side of it. Chatbots, when you are calling your airline company or something like that, you will come into some kind of customer system that will automatically ask you, are you looking for buying a new ticket? Or are you looking for rebooking a ticket that you already have bought? Or is it something else? So this is the early stages of artificial intelligence that also you can see it in our phones. You don't even have to use your fingerprint anymore. You can just look at your phone and it will open up. This is early artificial intelligence that is already here. And we're getting used to it. And we think that the world goes more easy with it. It helps us. And it reduces also manpower, so we can work more efficient. Most of us like it. But what most of us don't always think about is what we give, what kind of permissions we give to the people who produce it. So we give away all of our privacy just to make our life a little bit more easy. Because all this data from your phone is gathered by all these big companies. And of course, Google and Apple know more about you than your wife. And probably more about you sometimes than yourself. They can predict what you're going to do next. And they use it. So already here, we are giving them the big data that you don't have. So this is where this starts. And the next one is where we are now. We're talking about AI now as generative. How can it do more than just simple tasks, but it's making decisions at the same level as us. So now after ChatGPT or Gemini and all that, we can say, well, can you write me a thesis about what investigative interviewing will do to criminal justice in Thailand? And it will probably come up with a much better suggestion than 90% of us could do without that help. So it's helping us to something that you previously needed a professor. One of my main things in Thailand, together with many of you, and especially Kevin and Santani, is to promote investigative interviewing. Today, investigative interviewing is a scientifically ethical-based way of interviewing victims, witnesses, and suspects of crime, and mainly doing that in the same way, respecting the fact that you're still not convicted. So treating you almost like an innocent until the fact is that we have convicted you. If you ask ChatGPT what is investigative interviewing, I think mainly ChatGPT will give you a better answer than me. Because I'm emotional, as you know, Santini. So I have a lot of noise. I can talk about what investigative interviewing means for me, or for my country, or for people I have been interviewing. But ChatGPT will give you a much stricter, clearer, and better definition than I can, simply because it's not human. It's completely rational. And that's good. But very few of these will give you where they find the information. So this is helpful and not dangerous as long as you know it's correct. But what happens the way that you use it on an area you are completely ignorant on? Because this is one of the big problems with AI, is that most of them act like a black box. You put something in, something happens inside that box, and it comes out. You don't know what happened. You don't know where it got it from, and you don't know, you can't double check. So that's why my favorite AI boot is Perplexity. Do you know Perplexity? Because that gives you the sources. It will give you, this sentence was from that book. This sentence is, you have like references like any other thesis. So Perplexity is, for those of you who are afraid of AI, try Perplexity. We are now here. You see 2025 around here. So I think we are there. The reason that we are only there, there's actually just one reason. Do any of you know why we cannot get the superpower out of AI yet? Do you know why? Any suggestion? Well, to find the answer, you have to understand what AI really is. AI is a brain that is kind of connecting all your brains and my brain at one time. So it's no stronger than the network. The network is all of us who is connected to internet. So how many computers are connected with information inside it, servers and everything that I can now get access to? So the strength of the network will define the strength of AI. So the bigger the network, the bigger the potential. But of course you can imagine that this requires a lot of processing capacity. So how to dig that deep into that library of Thammasat or wherever where this source is, and do it in seconds from all over the world. So the processing capacity creates a lot of use of energy, electricity, and that is not yet possible. To create so much processing capacity to make it super intelligent. But it's quickly picking up, and it's picking up because all of us are getting stronger individual processing capacity. As again, it's the sum of our. The stronger the processor is in your computer, the stronger the network will be. So that is why it's growing. And by 2029, in European years, I don't know what that will be, 2572, something like that, only 4 years from now, they predict that a regular computer, like what everybody own, will have the same processing capacity as our brain. Today, your computer is no smarter than your cat. Somewhere between a mouse and a cat. So, well, some of us think that the cats are very smart. But cats are only smart at cat things. So there is big difference between the processing capacity of a mouse and a cat and a human being. We know that. But it's going so quickly, so in just a couple of years, all the computers will have the same. And then you put all these brains together, in a network, that's what AI does, and then you will have what they call super AI. This is what we are expecting, that it will be more smart. So the thesis that this machine can write is better than any professor. So why should you then listen to the professor? So this is where it starts to get very interesting, but also very threatening. Because it doesn't matter what kind of human being you find, because this one will be smarter anyway. Who will you then trust? So this is when we risk that trust is being challenged. And who is the most correct one? The human being or the machine? So now we are back to the first slide. Is this a threat or is it a gift? Well, that depends on you use it. So we know that we are in the age now where we can see that there are already signs that artificial intelligence do stuff with us that we didn't expect it to do. For instance, you remember the first time Donald Trump was elected. Do you remember what happened? There was an attack on the US government's election system. And it was also sending out a lot of spam, computer-generated spam, on his opponent, Hillary Clinton, at the same time. So probably artificial intelligence has already made it possible to interfere with the most crucial democratic process of all, the election. And we also know that the big institutions that can commercialize this into how to manipulate you through Facebook or Snapchat or TikTok, they spend a lot of money before elections. Last year, I read an article about what does TikTok look like if you are a 19-year-old Ukrainian citizen, and what does it look like if you are a 19-year-old Russian citizen. And they can live only 20K apart, and the reality inside that TikTok is completely different. All Russians are giving the information that help them to believe that this is a good war and a necessary war and a war they will win. And that it started because of all the Western people like NATO and EU are our enemies. So it's very hard to find a Russian citizen, at least I have been living in Russia the last 10 years, who will share your view of the world. So this is what we are seeing right now. And that's a threat. So which sources should you then believe? So this is also a threat towards newspapers, because we know that already today most newspapers use AI to create their articles. It's taken over more and more. I just want to show you another small video.
Here is Donald, here is Joe, my best friend, my best bro. Politics aside, on a spree, living life, just you and me. Doing things, making fun, drinking cocktails in the sun. Here is Donald, here is Joe, my best friend, my best bro.
It looks really nice, doesn't it? It's so funny. And this is, of course, made for entertainment. But the problem with these kind of movies is what is really happening here? Is it really Donald and Joe? Or is it not? So it's, who is it who have made it? Where was it made? When and how? Who is behind it and why? So these are the fundamental questions in a society that gives us knowledge and identity. They're also fundamental for the process of prosecution. Who did what, where and when, and why, the motive. So this is messing up our orientation about reality. So we don't know what's really happening. So how can we kind of find out what is true and what is not true in this one? And also, the identity, well, is this did it start with real pictures at all? Or is all of it made up? What is true and what is false? How much is true and how much is false? If this can create artificial realities, how about us who work as detectives to find an alibi? Maybe you can produce a false alibi showing you were somewhere last night that you really wasn't, if you just have the right capacity or knowledge. You can create digital alibis that we all know are probably some of the strongest evidence today. We use it very actively. If I want to prove that you did this murder, well, I can do it because I saw that your mobile phone was in this area last night, and you were actually searching for how to get out of homicide, things like that, but that people actually do. So if that is possible for us to create evidence from that, how can artificial intelligence create contrafactual information that can take away that evidence? Of course, we already know that this is used big time for frauds and scams already. They are so similar to the real digital service that it's very hard for all of us to see the difference. Is this really a message from your bank, or is it not? And if it's not, who are you going to ask? We know that you can contact your bank, but who is your bank? It's not a person. You will normally now meet a chatbot. So who's going to verify? Who do you trust? When most meetings are digital now. Threats, we see it at least where I live these days, but you're also close to China and hybrid warfare. In the waters around Norway, where I live, in the Baltic Sea, we have more and more things happening that is constructions to interrupt our society, create doubt in our own government, but it's not done by the political opponent in our country. It's done, most likely, by Russia. So what is then a real threat from our real government, or what is made up by artificial intelligence used by the Russians? So we are having more and more problems here to find out what is true and what is not when it comes to hybrid warfare. And there are probably other threats that we don't even think about. And I think the biggest one is what we already talked about, the fact that we are completely... Yesterday I was out having dinner, and I took the BTS back to my hotel. I can count on one hand the people who actually talk to each other on that train. everybody is just looking like. No one talks to each other. Very few people talk to each other. They just talk through this phone and send, I don't know. I'll probably do the same. So this is the new reality. So this is where you find your reality. It's not in the eyes of your partner anymore. So, thank you. I'm finished with you now, John. So, look at the dangers of criminal investigation. This can fuel our ideas with ideas that someone wants to be there. Of course, the influence and increased bias that these algorithms on social media can create is very strong. And it can make people go to wars. You can make young Russians willing to kill, who was not willing to kill. I don't think human beings really are interested in killing each other. But the moment I start to look at you as a threat to my own existence, then maybe it changes. We become not an us anymore, it's them and us. And this is what happens. They are fueling the them and us problem all the time. So if you are from them, you don't deserve the same. And I'm willing to kill you. So this is not only algorithm bias, but also things that are presented as facts. They are not facts, but they are presented as if they was facts. Mirroring science. False positive and false negatives, we know that if you are using these kind of things, it is completely relying on the data you already have. A computer cannot use information it doesn't have, just like we. So people who are already in a group of suspects, in Europe, that would typically be what we used to call gypsies, Roma people, immigrants. Maybe you have a much higher proportion of Albanians, Kosovo Albanians, Turkish or Iranian people, and also North African from Morocco involved in drug trafficking. It's just a fact. So who do you think will be stopped in a drug trafficking, artificial-driven identification process? Facial recognition or profiling? Of course, they will use the data we already have. So it means that they will stop the people who are in there already. So we will increase the dangers of the system of stereotypes. That's not good for the people who are from these countries and are, like the majority of people, lawful citizens. We have to remind ourselves that criminals are a very, very small proportion of the population. But these systems amplify that, and you can end up treating all of them as suspects just because they match the profile. So, and this we see that this makes it easier for us to say it wasn't my decision, it was the system. So you can kind of take a distance from it and say, sorry, Kevin, I know you're probably okay, but I can't choose because the computer told me that you should be stopped. It's not me anymore. So you're becoming a slave of the system. And I think history tells us that this happened. We can only see that what happened, how humans are willing to adapt when something above you tells you to. We will never forget, hopefully, what happened in Cambodia. We will never forget what happened in Germany during the Second World War. People easily become slaves of these kind of systems and obedient to it. So, and again, as I said, where does this information come from? What is the truth in it? How can we test the real sources of this information? So there is this black box nature that we already talked about, that this is not really evidence, it's just a suggestion. We know it's a strong suggestion, but where does it come from? This reminds me, you can see by my age that I am born in the 1960s. So I am a child of the European Cold War. For me, I grew up feeling that why does it have to be such a big difference inside of Europe? Who is living in Eastern Germany, they had a completely different life than the people living in Western Germany. And you know what the justice system was like in these states. They were highly used of informants. They even had systems to make the wife be an informant on the husband and on the opposite, and they did not know. Because you were afraid of losing your loyalty and their rights. They can take it away like that. No matter how high you were, if you were a top athlete, if you're a top professor, top violin player, snap like that, you can lose everything if you don't tell me what your husband is doing at night. This can easily become the new informant that we think we can trust. But we must never forget that we need to double check. So this can make us jump over the system of rule of law. Where is the evidence for what you're saying in this particular case? So exactly what happened in Eastern Europe, let's say 30 years ago. So weak accountability, weak governance, because the governance is already being effective. They thought they were doing the right thing because it's more effective. I know I'm right, so you can just go to jail. We don't need a court because I have your wife as an informant. It's really scary. And again, threatening the very, very core of a society and humanity, making us something we don't want to be. Well, yes, this is another example of how facial recognition are biased by the data that is already in there. Of course, in America, I talked about Norway and drug trafficking. The sad statistics, of course, of the American criminal justice system is that 8 out of 10 in prisons are black people. 80% are black people. So who do you think will be in the databases for facial recognition? Black people. So this is a pregnant woman in Detroit on her way to work, and she got stopped by the police saying that we have found your face on a speed camera and you are a suspect of a robbery.
And here I am pregnant. What am I going to do in jail?
She calls her arrest humiliating.
I was scared.
And the criminal charges that landed her in a Detroit detention center earlier this year, devastating.
I was going through a panic attack.
Portia Woodruff says she was 8 months pregnant back in February. That's when a group of Detroit police officers showed up to her home saying she was being arrested for carjacking and robbery.
It scares me, Doug, honestly, to have any type of interaction with the police.
Serious crimes Woodruff and her attorney Ivan Land say she never committed.
This is sickening.
According to a lawsuit they just filed against the city of Detroit and a police detective, Woodruff claims the investigators' use of faulty facial recognition technology led to her wrongful arrest. The lawsuit claims Woodruff was detained after the crime victim met a woman at this gas station on Detroit's east side. He allegedly told police the woman who helped rob him was seen hanging out with several men here. According to the lawsuit, the victim's stolen cell phone was returned back here to this gas station. Detectives also picked up surveillance video here, but Woodruff says she's never even visited this place. Land says DPD's facial recognition tools found a 7-year-old photo of Woodruff. They say the carjacking victim, who told police he'd been drinking, picked Woodruff's photo in a lineup. Land said the detective ignored the fact Woodruff was noticeably pregnant.
They're not equipped to deal with facial recognition.
In a statement released by Detroit Police Department, Chief James White said, "I have reviewed the allegations contained in the lawsuit. They're very concerning. We are taking this matter very seriously, but we cannot comment further at this time due to the need for additional investigation."
So these are the stories that if you are very eager to make the system more effective, you will have more false positives. So if this was not quite a resourceful, strong woman who was able to get a strong defense lawyer, she might end up getting convicted. But it was already damaged by the fact that she had to go to jail for 48 hours during her pregnancy and made her give birth almost 8 weeks early. So that could have killed her baby. So we have to remember this, and we have to balance this. And it's not just a gift. It can also be a danger if we trust it too much. So obviously we have privacy concerns. What kind of data are we supposed to allow access to the AI? Are there some kind of data we should protect? Who owns the data really? Who is actually owning all this? That is it the agency as we have this problem in Norway right now? Who is actually owning the police data? Is it the police? I don't think so. I think they probably belong to someone above the police. I'm not sure. Who can decide what to use it for? So how much do we want? Do we want to have a camera on every street corner? Or do you want to have somewhere that you can feel not observed? This is a gift I think we have almost forgotten. We are willing to give away a lot of our privacy if we think we can receive safety back. I say that a lot. I would like to have cameras everywhere because I don't do any wrong things. At least I try not to be a criminal. So I just want to be protected. So it's a good idea, but we have to question how it's used. You know, in the end, you end up not having an alibi if you can't prove it digitally. A word is nothing. So this is also another. Who actually owns this? Who have the right to say that you can access this but not this? This can easily become like a self-running machine that say, I will access everything. No one can stop me, not even the president. So, and also ownership to the AI algorithms. You know, when we use facial recognition or similar AI tools, it's not really the police who is running the technology. The police have no competence in running systems like that. It's a computer company that runs the system for the police. So who does really run it? And who does really own it? This was put to the test. I don't know if you heard about the system called Palantir. But Palantir is an intelligence system that is created in the US, in Detroit, by the police, and it was supposed to do links between crimes and people, or people and people, or crimes that we couldn't find automatically. But at one point, the police said, well, what if we want to see the data here? We want to see the algorithms. But then Palantir, the company, said no. That what is inside the black box is us. We own it. We are the company. This is our business. We cannot give it away because it's taken us 10 years to make it. So this is our intellectual property. So they are still fighting in court about that. Who owns it? And then we come into a very muddy water. If the government cannot really access the data that they use during their process of justice. So just Google Palantir and lawsuits, and you will see this. And this is one of my dilemmas in Norway as well, because there is not enough money and competence within our police organization to create these AI tools. We have to buy them from someone. Well, who owns the algorithm? So who then can say what is true and what is not true? If that competence is inside the company, it means that you need a PhD in artificial intelligence to become a judge. Technically speaking, who is the one who can testify to say that this is real information and this is scam? Who can determine that? So, how can you really decide what is true and what is not true? And who has the authority to decide? What office is that? We don't really have an office for that. So, as I said, is this how democracies commit suicide? That's really a question we have to discuss. If we are kind of killing ourselves by this, or like I thought, is it a race to the bottom? Does this really make us better human beings, or just more effective? What does it mean to be moral and a good human being? What is that? And how will the human override get into these processes and make a difference? Should we do it, or are we just a problem? If this machine is much stronger than us, are we the problem or are we the solution? What we see from research on moral things, that we accept, as long as we believe, like I said, as long as we believe that cameras will make this a better society, we are willing to accept it, as long as we don't really like that everybody is on tape all the time, but we can accept it because we want the rewards. We also know that I'm willing to kill because I think that this enemy will kill my mother and my neighbor. So I'm willing to do things I normally will not do if I think it's for a bigger cause than me. So this is one of our sides that can be used in this technology. Maybe we give away something because we think it's for a good cause. We have to be careful. So what I am going to talk about the last couple of slides is, can we create moral intelligence instead of artificial intelligence. What kind of support does our brain need to make better decisions? Can we use AI to create an idea about what does a good decision look like when it's made by a good judge on a good day? The best day, what is the model of that? And can we make the AI help us to do the best decisions more often? So almost like a support system. So moral intelligence. And can it help us to find out where we have blind spots in our decisions so that next time we can make the same decision better? So it can be a teacher for us, but not a judge. It can be a mentor. But then again, do we need an AI god? Who decides over AI? Who rules over AI? I don't. I wonder whether we should. I've been talking very long, but I would like to do a test before we take a short break so that you can get something to drink. I will go to the toilet and we'll come back. But Kevin will help me, because I said to you, my research is about what makes us good. How can I know that you are a good detective or can become a good detective, and you are not? If I was going to pick one, what would I look for? So I will now show you one of the tests that we used when I compared decision-making between homicide detectives in Scotland Yard and homicide detectives in Oslo, Norway. This is one of the tests I gave them. And hopefully you can do it. It will only take you 10 minutes to read it. Huh? You need English? Yeah. If you don't, we might get it in English as well. For those of you who don't read English, we can print an English one. Don't read Thai. But read this one. Do not discuss it. So do not discuss it with your neighbor, because we want to compare you to see who is the best. Afterwards, when you have finished, we want you to give it to your neighbor, and I will give you a QR code so you can find how to examine the results. And we can see the results on the screen afterwards. But this is just to see how much help, if you were detectives, how much help do you need to make the perfect decision as a homicide detective? So that we can. So please have a look at it. Are finished with the test, I want you to share it with someone sitting close to you so that you can score each other. If you use your phone, this one, hopefully this QR code will take you to a scoring form on Google Forms. And we can see how you score each other on the screen before we take a break. When you have finished scoring, I will give you a 10 minutes break so that you can refresh yourself. But please do the scoring first. If we can shift here now to the Google Forms. This one. So here, this is the scores coming up. So please just finalize it. And when you are finished scoring, feel free to take a 10-minute break, and we will be back here at 12:30. We will meet here again 12:30 to discuss the results of the Thai expert detective and see who are the best talents in the room. We will start discussing these results now. Of course, there is always a risk that you didn't score correctly, but so I will not use this for a scientific publication because it's not a completely reliable scoring process. But still, it's quite interesting because what we can see here, this case that is completely constructed to guide your brain in the direction of a criminal offense, give you a suspicion against a specific person and a specific crime. And that is true. It's probably wrong in this case not to have such a suspicion and start an investigation. We can clearly say that there is a suspicion here and reasonable grounds for suspicion, at least for kidnap. And what you see, most of us have said that. So the problem here is that this case, although there is a suspicion that she might be a victim of a kidnap, there is no evidence in it. So it means that she can still be alive. She can. The reason that she's not answering her phone, she can still have met this man, and you can leave the car again, and maybe she just met her secret lover, a boyfriend in the same class, and went to some love hotel, and is still there, for instance. Or maybe she decided to just leave the whole thing. I am mentally depressed. I'm going to kill myself. We don't know if this girl have mental issues. Sometimes also suicide comes as lightning from a clear sky with no pre-signs. And we also know that there can be an accident. She was out running, wasn't she? So maybe she just fell over, broke her foot, and she is somewhere that she can't get help. And maybe her phone was lost or broken in the fall. Or maybe she is kidnapped and murdered. And that's why she can't answer. So what I want to say here is that most of you have got one of these rights, but at this point in this investigation, all of these should be 100%. So the correct answer here is all 6. And all of these 6 alternatives should be investigated at the same time. And I think most of you, some of you are detectives, and I recognize you from previous trainings, is that we do that. If someone is missing, we do send out investigators to hospitals or is someone there. We do interview the family. Was there a mental health issue here? Did she talk about running away? So we are investigating these alternatives, but we have to make it clear that we actually have done it. So this is why we need to have it, all of it, at the same time. And if we can now turn into my previous presentation, I will show you what it looked like when I did the same kind of test with Norwegian and British detectives. So this is the same test with experienced, you see, England novices. England novices, that is police officers from London who are recently graduated from their training. England experienced, that is homicide detectives who have the accreditation, the national accreditation in England, as senior investigating officers. It's very, very hard to get and very hard to keep. Norway novices, that is Norwegian police officers who are newly graduated. And Norway experienced, that is Norwegian police officers who work with homicide, who have the same years of experience as the England, more than 22 years of experience on average as a detective. So we can see the highest performing group here is what you call England experience, this group here. This one is drunk. Really funny. Here. But also, the England experienced have a drop here. Fewer of them said that this can be accident, illness, and suicide, which is completely wrong. It can be. It's less likely, but you don't know until you have checked it. And what we know from human psychology is that if you don't look for it, you will not find it. You have to have conscious awareness if what you're looking for until you see it. If you're not looking specifically for it, you will very often be blind. So you cannot trust that your brain will pick up if you not specifically say, well, did you look for it? I think those of you who are prosecutors, if there are prosecutors in the room, will recognize this when you are trying to examine the quality of police investigations. Well, we want to know what you found, but we also want to know what you looked for and did not find, because that is also evidence. So imagine if you go in as a detective, you go in to search her room. You have the permission from the prosecutor to go inside this family's house, and you want to look in her room. What are you looking for? Well, you will be looking for things that can say, is this a suicide, or is she planning to run away? Is there a lot of things inside here that shows that she dreams of going somewhere or planning a journey? Maybe she ordered some tickets or looked for tickets or even bought the tickets or got a passport recently. Or so we also will search your computer for the same things. So to check. So it's not enough to go into that room and search it. You also have to know what you're searching for. And the hypotheses are what you are looking for. So they are guiding your investigation. So without it, you are relatively blind. So if you trust your results, all of you will be looking for information around kidnap, but maybe you will ignore signs of suicide, for instance. So this is why this is an important quality of a good detective, is to be able to keep many lines of investigations going inside your head at the same time and check them all equally against all data. And only when you can say clearly that this can now be ruled out, then you leave it. For instance, if you find her dead body, then you can say, of course, it's no longer a kidnap, it's no longer a runaway. And then it's up to the medical doctor to say if this is something else than an accident or natural death. If the autopsy says that this is not natural death, it's caused by strangulation, then you can be quite sure that this is now a murder. But only then. Only then. And all of us who are detectives knows this, but it's very hard to do it. And then you need a plan. So the average here, the average score was 49 of all the hypotheses. That's your score was 22. 22, the average score of the group. Yeah. Imagine now if you were living in a country where and this is a high-stake investigation. So you think you have the suspect here, and you think you only have one idea. This can easily lead to torture. You think this is a kidnap, and you think this man did it. So your only job is to make him agree with you, because you do not consider the alternatives. And we will be rewarded for prosecutions. We will be rewarded for finding criminals. The police are not rewarded for finding suicides. Although, remember this, suicides and accidents happen so much more often than crimes. In my country, sadly, we have much too many suicides. We have around 600 suicides on a population of 6 million every year. And we have only 30 murders. So it's 20 times more likely that this girl committed suicide than that she is murdered. And it doesn't show. So this is what we call the over-suspicionness of police officers. We are trained to look for crime, and that's what we do. So another really interesting finding from my research is that in England, you become better when you are an expert. They have a program that keeps you on your toes. They give you accreditation and make sure that you will deliver on that level all the time. Every case is evaluated and feedback. In Norway, the novices was better than the experts. This group over here, they had 1 year of experience. This group down over here had 23 years of experience. So experience does not always make you better. Number of years can actually make you worse. It's just like your car. An old car can be as good as a new car if you keep it well, maintain it, bring it to service often, and take care of it, just like your body. If you don't do that, the condition might go down. The same thing is about the brain. So you have to keep it sharp if you want it to be sharp. And Norway did not have a program for accreditation for top detectives. England have, and you can see the difference. But this is where I think also artificial intelligence can help us. So if you had a computer, it's very easy for a computer to say there are 6 alternative explanations for a missing person. And it can just, when you start this case, the computer will tell you, Peter, there are 6 alternatives. Remember to address all of them. Here are my suggestions of the 20th most important investigative actions. In fact, I will challenge you now. When you leave this room, go into your AI chat, ChatGPT, Proximity, Gemini, whatever what you prefer, and ask them, give me an investigation plan based on hypotheses for a missing person. And I am sure that the plan will be better than yours, even better than these. So this is where I think AI can help us. You know, almost like a safeguarding tool. You know, now we're getting used to wearing seatbelts in the car. But you know, seatbelts was invented by Volvo, the Swedish. You know, I'm Norwegian. I don't like Swedish people officially. We are supposed to be friendly rivals. But I have to admit that Swedes are a very, very ingenious engineers. They are fantastic engineers, Sweden. So Volvo invented the seatbelt. And at the time, I was only 3 or 4 years old. This was in the early 1970s. So people like my dad and my granddad, they didn't want to wear the seatbelt because they think this is very feminine. How can the Swedes, the fucking Swedes, suggest that we need this? I'm a good driver. I've been driving for all my life with no accidents. I can still remember my granddad saying this. So what did Sweden do? They invented a small signal inside your car that said beep, 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 and a red light if you were driving with no seatbelt on. So there was no escape for my granddad. He had to put it on. Yeah. And still, we do it now, because sometimes we think, oh, I'm just going for a short trip to buy something at the grocery store. It's only 5 minutes or 5 seconds. I don't need the seatbelt. But the car said, yes, you do. Put it on. This is the kind of help I think artificial intelligence can help us with. Making the right decisions at the right time. Because we know what to do. But research shows that even though we know it, we don't do it. Either because we don't want to, or because it's not cognitively available for us in the moment. So this is better for a machine because they don't have this kind of pride. So here I think AI can close the gap on a low-performing cognitive task, raise it up to a higher conscious level, and higher performing. So we've done this in many countries. You see the average amongst experts is about the same as yours, around 20, 22, 25. England here, 78. Netherlands, quite good, because they do have an accreditation program. Norway, not good. Denmark, not good. Iceland, not good. Brazil, Indonesia, Vietnam. A lot of torture going on in Vietnam. I think there's a link between this. There's a link between this and torture. There's a link between this and wrongful convictions. So I say, this is the beginning of a criminal case, and rule of law starts here. If you don't look for it, you will not find it. So I will now finally show you some of the AI products, because I have been speaking before the break about mostly the dangers of AI. But I also think there are a lot of positive sides of AI, and we can use it, and we should use it as quickly as possible. And I already said, for decision support, to create these hypotheses, what should I investigate now? And I think also prosecutors can help checking that these are the right alternatives. So then you need systems that remind the detective on the right spots. Now, in this interview, did you actually ask these questions to the mom of the missing person or not? So we have created, and we are currently creating an AI for interviews in Oslo, where we have like 4 stages: information collection and processing, what is actually said in police interviews. It can automatically transcribe and identify the bits of information. It can automatically give this to other detectives working on the same case, or tell you to look for information that confirms or disconfirms this idea. And also, it can be used for evaluation and feedback, so that automatically the AI will tell you whether you followed your investigation plan or not. If you did this interview in the way that the standards tell you, did you use too many leading questions? Or did you do it in a good way? Did you actually inform the suspect of their right to silence, or did you not? That can make or break this interview. So this we can use AI for, and we concept 1 to 4 on these levels, how we can make that interact. And this is the interview process. Many arguments against using scientifically based interviewing is that it takes longer time. Well, yes, it does, because you are harvesting more information than if you are just looking for one thing. So it will take more time. So we need instruments to cut down that production process and make it more effective. So that in the beginning, you can use AI to access the case material and ask, what should I actually ask for in this interview? Because your brain is not really capable of storing all the information in that case. Your brain will focus on what you think is important and miss something that can be important. Here, AI can help you. And in my little world, I even think beyond that. Think about, oh, sorry, we're out of time, but think about a pilot in a jet fighter. He has the most expensive helmet in the world. The helmet of a F-35 jet fighter pilot costs $500,000. The helmet. In that helmet, if we can make what I think can be a homicide detective goggles. Here, Peter, if I interview you, you say, yesterday, Ivar, I was visiting the wine connection on Sukhumvit. I was there together with my partner, and we shared a good meal. I was paying, and I was back home again around 10:30. Normally, if I had the permissions in a serious case, my goggle should be able to give me a green light if your explanation to me is corresponding with all the digital evidence we have on you. We have your phone on that area. We can see that your credit card paid at the wine connection around 10 o'clock, and we can also see that you passed this highway toll station around 10:40. So green information here, cross-checking that your information is probably true. Opposite, it can give me a yellow light saying we don't have evidence to check, we need it. Or red, we have evidence, but it's not in accordance with his explanation. That is possible today. That is actually possible to do that today, and we don't do it. I think we should do it. It will make us more effective and also give us more rule of law. So this is how I think we can, interactively, this will give you a starting for a better unbiased information interview guide. It can translate give this what was really said in that interview, not what the police officer heard, but what was really said. That can be very different. And I know it's very different because I come from a country where we now are audio or video recording all interviews, and sometimes I check them. Mostly working from defense lawyers. What's in the police report is normally not what is in the transcription. There is a lot of things that is left out, and that is the job of the officer, because you cannot write down everything, but you should not leave out anything that is of importance for the prosecutor or the defense lawyer, and they do. So this can give you interview process along the way. It can give you check, is there something more that had happened in the case during the interview? It can, of course, transfer this information live. What is this person saying in this interview now? That can interact with other investigative actions that is going on right now. He is saying that he left this place. Well, go there and interview that waiter or the owner of that wine connection. See if he can verify Peter's explanation. Interactive actions that can happen right now. Of course, it can easily transcribe the interview. We can see now that the language models are so strong. Last week or 2 weeks ago, Kevin sent me some videotapes from our training in Hua Hin in September last year. Thai detectives interviewing Thai detectives, and I don't speak Thai very well. So I used a program called Whisper that automatically generated subtitles in English. And it gave me the possibility to give you feedback, Kevin. Was the feedback adequate? Yeah. So it wasn't perfect, but it was good enough for that purpose. And that's a free software. And it shows not only for feedback, but also for maybe international cooperation. You can go very quickly. You can transfer it to Japanese, to Norwegian, live during the interview. So this can cut down. So what the detective should do, of course, in the end, is to check that this is in accordance with my experience, and also, if the law requires it, give the witness the possibility to check if this is accordance with what you said. So, and of course, for feedback, this can also give you the score. What should a good interview look like, and how did you do it? You need training, especially on rapport building. You were a little bit too rushed, or you didn't inform them about all the laws, or you used too many leading questions. It can give you feedback and give you a score. And as you see, we can go back to the top athlete. I want to get a better score next time. And the interview will, and this AI can give you that. We have calculated in the country of Norway, police officers spend around 20% minimum of their time writing reports. And that is police officers who are in the streets. Detectives spend even more. So this can then cut the costs, let's say 15% then. So in a snap, you get 15% more detective capacity. The same people. So this, I think, is very promising use of AI. And as you don't have to wait, it's available now. So I won't go into that, but this is just one of the things I said. It gives us enhanced analytical capabilities. It gives us the possibility to find the needle in a haystack. because this machine will find it. Just ask for it, and it will tell you if it's there. Did anybody else in this case mention wine connection? Yes, there are 3 witnesses here. Okay. So improve forensic techniques. It can speed up the process like we have seen, but you should never take away the fact that you have to double check. Do not leave the decision to the machine. Give it to the human decision maker, but tell him where to look. Then the brain is very strong. Human brain is not so good at producing information, but it's very good at checking. We know that. If you just know, we will check for it, and we are most of the time capable. So this can give us much more better resource optimization. We know that we already use some of these low-hanging fruits already. For instance, when it comes to sexual abuse on the internet. So if there is a picture of some kind of abuse out there, we have hashtagged it once, and you have one judge or prosecutor who have made a decision that this picture is not allowed to spread. You don't look for the picture anymore, you just look for the file code. And computer do it for you. It goes much more quickly, and it also saves our officers for all the trauma in looking in these pictures again and again and again. Very effective. Actually, we had a case in Norway where we used this. We used facial recognitions in a sexual offender case, but not to find the offender, but to find the victims. We only identified 5 young girls, but when we used AI, we found 200. Because we used Facebook and Snap and all that, and they can identify the victims on this groomer's computer for us. Then we can talk to the victims and say, did you really have contact with this man? Yes. And it led to 200 convictions instead of 5. So real-time cross-checking of data, like I just said about the interview with you, Peter, and cross-agency collaboration. There's a lot of problems with language. So language can be, barriers of language and law can be broken down with use of AI. Quickly can transfer information if you want to. But of course you need a prosecutor. You need to go through all the same mechanisms to do it, but when you do that, it can go much quicker. More effective information sharing. And of course, what is it we want to target? Like I said before, what is it the police already know? How can we make the police find out what we already know? Well, AI can tell us that you probably have a problem of crime over here that some of your analysts haven't seen yet. So help you to find your blind spots. What does your data suggest is your biggest problem in this area? Or tell you that in the neighboring area, this is a big problem, but not here. Is it because you didn't look for it, or because it doesn't exist? So that can make us better to look for it. And finally, it can help us improve better. It can give us much more quicker feedback. And I think also simulators. Because what is making this jet fighter pilot so good is that they have 360 simulators. So he has been flying over Afghanistan already 100 times before he actually do it. And this can also speed up the training of officers, of prosecutors, of judges, to give them more of these decisions before they actually need it. So I think that concludes my my talk, people, and thank you a lot for your attention. But I will just end by saying we should never use the machine to make the decisions. A democracy is a conversation between people. It's meant to be a human interaction. Don't leave it to a machine. But please, we can get some help to make that conversation good and relevant. So by that, thank you. And thank you so much for your attention. I know I've been saying a lot, but you have been a really good audience. None of you have fallen asleep. So now, Kevin, was there a score?
Yes, but thank you, Ivar, for your wonderful presentation. And Peter have some gift to give for you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ivar.
I then have to say thank you because Peter helped me to write up the announcement, how to announce this lecture. Thank you so much. So, yes.
ครับขอบคุณทุกท่านมากเลยนะครับเดี๋ยวก่อนที่จะออกจากห้องครับจะรบกวนขอให้ทำแบบสอบถามความพึงพอใจนิดนึงครับผมขอบคุณมากเลยนะครับ